Hello, I'm Steph from iDriver Classic, and in today's video we're having a look at a Humber MK1 Sceptre. Now this particular example, being from 1965, is a MK1A. Now if just like me you've probably never seen one of these or haven't seen one in quite some time, you'll probably appreciate that in today's video we're going to be going round, getting up close and personal, looking under the bonnet, looking at the dash in closer detail, as well as going into the tech spec and going out for a test drive. Even though there was over 17,000 of these made across the MK1 and the MK1A, I believe less than 100 are still on the roads of Great Britain today, which means that it's a car that we just probably aren't seeing much of at all. But before we get into any of that, let's have a message about our channel sponsor. Life's too short to drive something boring, so make sure you do something about it this year. I would begin your journey on the Bidding Classics Auctions website. They've got some fantastic cars up for grabs. They've got everything from pre-war stuff right through to the 90s and early 2000s stuff, with an incredible mix of different marques, models and price brackets as well. Now, let's get back to that video and I'll show you what we're doing today. When Humber made cars, they made them to have impact, and the impact being a lasting impression of quality, fine engineering and reliability. And this Sceptre is still delivering those qualities decades after first purchase. But where did it all begin? Well, the Sceptre was introduced in 1963, and it was initially, Roots had decided that it was coming in to replace the Rapier, which is why if you look at the front grille, you might feel that it is a bit Rapier-ish in its design. Now, Roots were really good as a company at keeping everything moving, technology-wise, design-wise, and that's why you rarely see them sitting on anything for too long. You find that models move on quite quickly, you find that cars go through several marques before they come to the end of production, and they put in regular adjustments and model upgrades. However, something curious must have happened, because instead of this coming in to replace the Rapier, it then ran alongside it in the model lineup, and the Rapier continued in production until 1967. Although it's not often the Rapier that you talk about when you hear people talking about the Sceptre. Quite often people start talking about the Super Minx, because the MK1 Sceptre is based on the Super Minx. Although if we kind of went in and said, oh, it was just a lazy rebadging like you see other manufacturers do, that wouldn't be correct, because the Sceptre is unique in many ways on its own. Things like the roof, the glass, the rear and upper bodywork, all completely unique to the Sceptre. And if you're wondering where it's positioned, the car was positioned in the Roots lineup at the top of the mid-range lineup of cars. On a wider automotive landscape, it was priced at around £1,000, I believe, and this meant it was considerably pricier than something like a Ford Console Cortina GT. But Roots didn't think they were pitching to that particular customer, so for them that wasn't really a concern. When Roots were looking at who their customer was, they thought it was someone who might be considering an MG Magnet, the marque of its time, or perhaps had outgrown their beloved Alpine. In dealerships and advertisements at the time, the Humber Sceptre was built by Roots as a way to enjoy a new kind of motoring. It was said to have it all. It was the car which was superbly equipped. It was a compact sports saloon, very important because you need to consider where it was pitching to. It was said to have exciting performance and design, and best of all, it was built and finished to the highest Humber standards of comfort and quality. So though it was a kind of unique prospect and they were pushing a new sporty saloon, which was maybe something they'd not done before, they were very much saying that it was still a Humber through and through. But what does this mean when it drills down and we look at what the car offers the motorist? Well, the car had an enviable lineup of standard features, and this is really important, and this is really well this car sells itself. And it offers a lot more than many other popular British marques of the era. Stuff that other people like Morris were asking customers to pay extra for. Humber were coming in and saying, well, I know you're paying a bit extra, but look at what you're getting as standard. Now, to fully understand what they were pushing as a unique feature or popular for its time, it's worth looking at one of the brochures. So I picked up a brochure from the era, and these are some of the bits that they pull out as standard. So a diaphragm spring clutch for less pedal effort. The overdrive is standard. I'm going to talk to you a lot more about this later in the video. Built-in heating and ventilation. You might consider this an essential, but even Morris had customers paying well into the 60s for this basic function. An elegant suspension system from Masterly Ride, or in technical terms, fully independent independent front suspension employing coil springs and swinging links. Suspension controlled by Armstrong telescopic shock absorbers housed neatly down the centre of each coil spring. And to the rear, you get the semi-elliptic leaf springs with Armstrong double-acting telescopic shock absorbers to allegedly maintain adequate control in all weather conditions. A really key point actually, which I think supersedes many of the other extras, is there are no greasing points in this car, which is a huge plus point because there's nothing more annoying than having to grease cars every 1,000 miles or so. Steering is a high efficiency steering unit for precision control. Although those that want a bit more tech and less marketing speak, it's Berman recirculating ball type on this one. It's a 3-piece symmetrical track rod linkage with nylon inserts and seal ball joints, which again require no regular greasing. Hurrah! You also get wider opening doors and child locks on this, which is perfect for someone who's maybe looking to step up from a 2-door sports car or something a little bit smaller. You can get children in and out, and also they don't eject themselves on the way to the destination. Plus many more brilliant features, which I'm going to talk to you later about in the video. At the start of this walk around, I spoke of routes never resting too long in one place, so it won't surprise you to know that the Mark 1 came to an end after 2 years, and it was replaced by the Mark 2 in 1965, although it never sold quite as many units as the Mark 1, so perhaps it's not just me who prefers that earlier styling. Now this is a very special car, but who owns it? Well, the owner Brian was unable to come on the camera today, so Kev instead is going to talk to us a little bit about the Sceptre magic, and in fact he's maintained and looked after this car for 20 years.
Hi, Kevin Hurst here. Just a brief story about this lovely Humber. It's not my Humber. I haven't bought it. First of all, thanks very much to Brian for lending it to us in the first place. Brian didn't want to appear on camera, which is fair enough. So basically, he's had the car for 20 years, done quite a bit of work to it. It's had new front wings, sills, rear arches, and a complete respray that I think was done about 12 years ago. So there's a few little bits on the car now. He uses it as just summer use basically, and it's just an absolutely lovely car. It's, as Steph said, it's really of its time. It's lovely to drive. It's a really good quality car. Would have been absolutely superb when it was brand new. One of my first memories of a Humber Sceptre was in 1975 when I was amazingly a small boy. I know I don't look that old, but I just started school, and at the local garage there was a green Mark II Humber Sceptre that had been involved in an accident, and it was all, the near side wing was all smashed in. It had been bumped and left on the side of the garage, going to go to scrap. My dad saw it and thought I could do something with that, so he went and bought this car, and he paid the princely sum of £12.50 for it, and with view to renovating it, or not renovating it in those days because it was just a banger. It would have just been as transport. Both him and my uncle tried to tow it and get it home back to our house. My uncle at the time had a Mark 1 Cortina 1200, and the Cortina just would not pull it. So my granddad came out with his Humber Minx 1965, and he pulled it home. My dad at the time worked at David Brown's Tractors, and his mate used to do a bit of scotching and repairing people's cars and whatever. So he welded a new wing on it, repaired the car, and that was our family car for 3 years. Absolutely brilliant old car. So I've got a real affection for these cars, and I just think they're absolutely wonderful. A great mate of mine, we used to play with this old Humber, and it was just, I've got wonderful memories of Humbers. So it's a real pleasure to see one on the road. If it came up for sale, I probably would have to buy it, even though I don't particularly need it. I haven't got space. And that's it. Thanks very much for watching, and thanks very much to Brian once again.
Coming back inside here, when Humber brought this to market, they described it as the superbly equipped sports saloon. But what does that even mean beyond the marketing spiel? Well, we've actually got quite a lot going on. So first of all, over here, you've got your grab handle and you've got your sun visor. And you've also got child locks on the back doors. But what do these all have in common? Well, first of all, I'm just going to show you how these child locks work. So they're just operating on a pin there. But the idea was that all of these were part of a safety package. The idea was enhanced safety for both driver and passenger. Coming down from there, we've got the glove box. Now you've got quite a bit of space in here, which the owner's filled up with various bits and pieces and spares. Rather marvellous really, because if anything goes wrong, I think it's all hidden away in that glove box. Now coming into the centre here, this is where the car really starts to shine in terms of what it offers. Now running from left to right, you've got your temperature gauge, you've got your ammeter, oil pressure gauge and the fuel gauge there as well. It steeps down from there and you get your choke, you get 2-speed wipers. Now that's a really nice thing because that's not a given for this era of car. Over into the ignition, and then over on the right hand side we have got the light switch, and then coming down from there you've got the heater controls for the car. So if you can see, it goes from off through to cold, warm and hot. Now it's set on hot, so I'm just going to leave it all alone today. And then over on the right hand side it's demist, screen and de-ice. Would have preferred to have had one that said car, but we'll go with it. Now coming down we have the cigar lighter, the radio, which has long wave and medium wave to it, and over on the right hand side here you've got your windscreen washers. They've got quite a slow return on them, but I'm not here to criticise, it washes the window quite well. And coming down from there you've got your panel lights. Now if you're going to say to me, Steph, if you're not too au fait with 60s vehicles, you're definitely going to ask me why that's a thing. Well, it's very of its time, because in the kind of, I would say up till about the mid-late 70s, you do still see these panel lights being able to be switched on and off. And the idea is that the driver will be distracted by light coming from the dash at night. So you just switch it all off and then everything is total darkness inside. Personally, I don't like to do it, but I do know a few people that do. It's not really my thing. And then you've got your ashtray, again, a few handy bits and pieces hidden away in there. And on the right hand side, you've got the switch for your blower. Again, that's 2-speed. All very succinctly laid out, all very well put together. But I imagine you're thinking, that's an awful lot going on there. Which bits are extras? None of it. So all of this that you see here came as standard. I think the only optional extra that you could buy at 65, because I've had a look at a brochure for 1965, was the white wall tyres. Everything else came as standard. Now coming in front of us, you've just got 2 main gauges, well, dials, and over on the left hand side you've got your speedo and your trip clock, and on the right hand side you've got a rev counter. Now there's a little detail that you might miss if you're just going to see this at a car show, and this is up here. Now I would have missed this as well, but Kev loves the Sceptre and he said, look at this. So you remember we were talking about being able to turn off the panel lights. You can also turn off the indicator warning light as well. So if you've got the indicators on, you've got a flashing light, but this flips up so that you don't have to look at it at night. Again, just removing that light if the driver so wishes. I think that is such a thoughtful detail, and it's not something I think I've seen on anything else. Now coming down from there, you've got 2 arms. So you've got this stalk on the left, which is your indicators. And on the right hand side, this stalk is for your laycock overdrive. Now the overdrive is on 3rd and 4th. Again, that is standard. You're not paying extra. I know for cars like the MGB, you were having to pay extra for it. And the best bit about this is it's also self-cancelling. In terms of gears on this, you've got your standard gearbox. I believe it's the same one that they used in the Rapier. And I think the 1600 engine out of this is from the Rapier as well. So it's a later gearbox than this. And I'm not entirely sure if it's synchro on all gears as standard for this particular year. I think some of the very, very early ones, I don't think had synchro on first. This does, because the gearbox is a later one. So it's 4 forward gears and reverse, and you've of course got that overdrive on 3rd and 4th. Your engine in this is your 1600, as I've just mentioned. Now it's 80 brake horsepower and it's 0 to 60 in 17.1 seconds. There's also something else I've forgotten to tell you, because somebody will ask me about this. Now I know on the Mark II you could get auto. On these it wasn't an option. It was manual all the way on these. So anybody ever gets into one of these, an early Mark 1 or a Mark 1A, and you've got an automatic transmission, that's something that someone's changed over. That wasn't an option from the dealer. Other than that, I know someone's going to ask me about MPG on these. I think it's 23 around town is what it's advertised at. So it's a little bit thirstier than you might hope for, but remember, petrol was a lot cheaper back then. Now I'm going to get this started up. It sounds so lovely, by the way. Right, let's go on an adventure. My goodness, isn't this lovely? Now I suspect that the rev counter might be slightly out because it's saying that we're doing 5,500 RPM, but I don't think we are. Gosh, this is an absolute dream to drive. Now I know that a lot of you will probably be looking at this and thinking, that is a big old vehicle. So I think it's 13 foot, I think it's 13 foot 11 long and 5 foot 3.5 inches wide. Now the really weird thing is when you look at it from the outside, it feels so big and you think, God, that is, you're going to feel so small when you get inside. But actually, once you get in, it doesn't feel like there's loads and loads of room around you. It feels like there's enough, but not millions. Now, one of the great things about this car, and it is something that Humber advertised, is the wraparound screen to the front, and the way that the glass is curved to the back with that glass inset means that you essentially have 360-degree visibility. And although the car is incredibly big, the seating position and the fact that you've got so much visibility means that you don't feel at all like inhibited or you feel like you've got to get used to it. You get in, you immediately are able to surmise how much room you've got around you, how big the vehicle is, and I think that I could probably parallel park this. That's how confident I feel, knowing how big this vehicle is. And this is a lot bigger than anything I've been driving lately. I feel so at home in this. The steering wise, I don't know if you can see, it's on a recirculating ball joint, but it's a funny one because as we come along, and I know I talked a lot about that steering when we were doing walk around, the thing that catches you straight away is just how light and how responsive it is for the era. You know, I'm not expecting the same responsiveness that I would in a brand new vehicle, but for the era, it is good. I thought it would feel quite heavy even at low speeds, and it doesn't, which is something that the Triumph 2000 had stacked against it. The one we tested recently was that at low speeds it felt quite heavy, and this, not so. Now as I come round, I'm having to be quite careful braking because everything I've been in lately has been on drums all the way round, whereas this, move, is on disc to front and drums to rear, which means that it pulls up very sharply. They've been adjusted very well. It's an absolute pleasure to drive. Wind noise is minimal. There's a little bit coming from up here, but I wonder if I haven't. No, I have got the window fully up. It's coming from this top part of the quarter line, but look, it's a very small criticism indeed, because as we cruise along, it's so incredibly comfortable. But remember, Humber were used to making cars for people with money and with a bit of a position in life. I mean, goodness me, Winston Churchill drove a Humber, the Queen Mother drove a Humber, or was certainly ferried round in one. Humber were used to making cars with class, and this one is full of it, and it's just such a pleasurable drive. I wish that you were sitting here next to me and could just appreciate how comfortable these seats are. And I probably should have mentioned actually when we were talking about the interior that these front seats are fully reclinable as well, so you can really adjust the seat to exactly how you wish it to be, which is such a lovely detail for the time. I know sometimes I probably bring things up and you say, well Steph, I would expect that on a vehicle, but remember when we look at these vehicles, we look at them contextually. How do they hold up for the period of time in which they sit? Now in terms of usability on this, I would say it's incredibly usable, because not only do we have fantastic legroom and space around us in the front, and I don't know if you saw in the back there, you've got your armrests. Now again, they're all standard as well for the vehicle. They're not something that somebody's paid extra for, which I think is incredibly good. Just little things like that, special details that just increase the enjoyment of everybody really, from passenger through to driver. And also if you are bringing lots of people with you on a trip, there's no need to worry, because in the boot you've got 16 cubic feet of space. So I guess in terms of as it comes along, you've got enough get up and go to be cruising along. It's not, I thought it would be a lot quicker if I'm honest. It's not particularly quick, but then you don't need it to be particularly quick. It's a saloon for goodness sakes. If you want a quick car, you go for a sports car. It's got enough get up and go to keep up with modern traffic. I imagine at the time it was probably quite quick compared to other things on the road, but for now it's just lovely, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it myself. It's such a gorgeous car, and I can see why the gentleman that owns it has kept it for 20 years, because as you cruise along in it, and I've taken out a lot from the 60s, the cabin noise, and I know that when they built these, they did, I believe they put sound deadening in underneath to try and lessen the noise. It's very quiet, it's comfortable, these seats have been upholstered in a way that hugs your body all the way round, so you could do miles and miles in these without feeling knackered like some of the 60s stuff. To change gear is incredibly easy, and it changes gears so smoothly as well. I know it's not a particularly high mileage example. It's on 77,000 from new, so yes, it's not a particularly high example, but it's certainly not a museum piece on 20,000 either. So I think we've got a fair idea of how that gearbox should feel, and as you change the gears, look, it's just so simple. It's lovely. Everything about this ticks the boxes for me. In terms of what I don't like about it, I can't think of anything. This for me is everything. The steering is perfect, the seating position is lovely, the quality of the materials used to put it all together, superb, exceptional. It's such a quality vehicle. But what else would you expect from Humber? They always made nice cars, and any that you tend to look at car shows have held up quite well. The only thing I would say is if you are off to look at one of the very limited examples that are left of these, is that they do rot out quite quickly compared to some of the other stuff from the time. So if you are going to have a look at it, either be a welder yourself, know someone who's quite good at welding, and be prepared to go into it with eyes open. Try and get it on a ramp to have a good look at it. This particular example, because although it's used in summer, it's used very sparingly, and it comes off the road in winter and on periods of time where the weather's quite horrendous. So it's lasted very well indeed, and it's not a rot box. So I think we've been very fortunate today to take it out on a test drive. Thank you so much to the owner for his generosity in sharing the vehicle as well, because it's not something that he loans out willingly all the time. Although for those of you that do watch Heartbeat, you may have seen it on Heartbeat, because it is an ex-Heartbeat car. Now it's time for me to take this back to Kev's house, because guess what, I'm putting on overalls now over this lovely dress, and we're going to try and get my Morris Minor fixed, because I don't know if you know, but I think a valve's burnt out. I don't know. Look, we haven't even got the head off yet. So it's back to Kev's now for me. I don't know what the rest of you have got planned for today. Do let me know. But until next Sunday, when we're back looking at something else, take care and drive safely.